Canada is working with other countries to get COVID vaccines distributed across the globe. It's an initiative called COVAX, and the project has secured 2 billion doses. Ottawa has pledged $75 million in funding, as well as any surplus doses from the contracts it signed. The Minister of International Development, Karina Gould, joins me now from Burlington, Ontario. Minister, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, David.
So COVAX has this very ambitious and noble goal of vaccinating the world, for lack of a better way to describe it. It's got access to 2 billion doses of promising vaccine candidates, but a lot of those are candidates, right? They're not vaccines. They may not be approved until 2021. So given that, can COVAX meet its goals?
Well, what we heard today was really promising from COVAX, and what it was talking about was that it is very much on track to meeting its goals, both with the number of doses potentially secured, as well as the funding that they have secured. And so obviously, as you mentioned, these are vaccine candidates. They still have to go through their final phases of clinical trials and get regulatory approval, but it's looking very promising, and there are a lot of players working together to make this a reality.
Okay, so Canada has promised to donate its surplus vaccines to this initiative. We look at the timelines of what the Public Health Agency and the Prime Minister are saying, that most Canadians who want a vaccine will be vaccinated by the end of September. So is that when the donations start at the earliest? We're talking the last couple of months of this year?
Well, I think it's maybe a little too early for us to say exactly when that would happen, because it's also if it happens. I mean, as we all know, we have one vaccine, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine that's been approved by Health Canada. Those doses are starting to arrive. That's fantastic news for Canadians. Obviously, our top priority is making sure that Canadians get vaccinated. But at the same time, we really want to ensure that we are providing equitable access right around the world. And so if we have surplus capacity, we will absolutely donate those vaccines. But to give you a date would be a little premature.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe a benchmark then. Is it when all of Canada's vulnerable population is vaccinated, or is it when the majority of the Canadian population is vaccinated? Like, at what point do you decide surplus actually exists?
Well, it's a really good question, and one that maybe is a bit tough to answer because there are a lot of unknowns right now. As I said, we have one vaccine that's been approved. There are several more candidates with whom Canada has agreements. But at the same time, remember that COVAX is also entering into agreements with different countries around, with different manufacturers around the world as well. Canada is also a member of the COVAX facility. So while we are making a contribution to ensure that low-income countries get access to vaccines, we're also a member, and some of those vaccines are the same ones as the ones we have deals with, and some are different. So there are a lot of moving parts, but what I can assure you and your viewers is that Canada is playing a leadership role in ensuring that everyone around the world gets vaccinated and that no dose goes to waste. And so we are really leaning into this space to make sure that there is equitable access.
Okay, so there are 92 countries that are looking to be helped as part of the COVAX rollout. How do you decide which country gets it first, right? Like, what's the criteria for setting those priorities?
So COVAX is working on that, but they have a couple of guiding principles that are important. The idea is that if you are a member country of COVAX, you would get access to vaccines for 20% of your population in the first year. And the idea is to similar to what we have here in Canada, where we have priorities for who should get vaccinated first, it would be the same in different countries around the world. But COVAX would be putting some guidelines out, like those most at risk, of fatality, or those who are healthcare workers. And so they're working through all of that right now, and Canada is playing a really important role in ensuring that they have the governance that they need and also the resources.
So is it similar to how we're approaching it here, where the federal government buys vaccines, distributes it to the provinces on a per capita basis, and then they sort of follow the national guidelines on vaccinating their population? That on a global scale is roughly how it works.
Yeah, that's actually a really good way to describe it.
Okay. All right. I want to ask you a little bit more about access to these drugs. These are the most coveted things on earth, right? Those are liquid gold in those vials. The European Union and the US, they've said that they oppose proposals to waive intellectual property rules for COVID-19 drugs. But others are calling for an exception to this to help low-income and poorer countries. What's Canada's position on that?
So our position is that we are open to dialogue, and we're open to understanding what the current barriers are for developing countries to access these drugs and these vaccines right now. We're having conversations in Geneva. We have heard from countries like South Africa and India who want, IP to be waived. And our position right now is just saying that we're open to dialogue, we're open to discussion. But there are existing flexibilities to ensure that once these treatments and therapies and vaccines are available, that they are made accessible. And so we'd like to understand what the current barriers are within the existing framework. But as I said, we're open to that dialogue and that conversation.
Okay. Minister Karina Gould, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, David.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.